Welcome to the Goody Room, your one-stop shop for everything movies, TV, and more. We know you want the goodies. Welcome back to the Goody Room. I'm your host, Matt the Nachos, always with my man in the chair, Frankie Rock. How you doing today, Frank?
Dude, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing just peachy. It's a little warm in this room. It's a little hot outside, but it's always good when we get to talk, about movies and our favorite things. Real quick, we want to thank everybody for listening to episode 1, giving us the feedback on that, showing us the love and support. I really appreciate that. Frank, any heartfelt words for our fans?
Yeah, well, I also want to throw in there, I don't think we did this last episode, but the fans that have been with us back when we were just Why You're Wrong on Facebook for years with our reviews, those of you that would stop us randomly and be like, hey, when's the next review coming out? And we'd always be like, why aren't you liking and sharing? And you'd be like, oh, I don't do that, but we still read them. We really appreciate you guys a lot for being with us all these years and now into the next phase of, our page, which is the Goody Room. I just wanted to say thank you. And thanks for being with us.
Yep. Thank you always. And we appreciate it. Remember to follow, like, and subscribe. It really does help us. It helps us know that, you guys are out there, you're caring, you're showing us the love. Comment back, give us some things to talk about, things you want to hear, you want to listen, you want our opinions on. That's always great, to get the feedback from you, the people. So we're going to go ahead. We'll hop right into it. We got a full list of topics to talk today. We have streamer Botch, children with adult money, and we're going to go ahead and hop right into streamer Botch. And
this
our
week,
first,
this episode, we're going to be talking about July blockbusters. Oh, no, excuse me, June blockbusters. Got too excited there. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, because who wants to talk about June blockbusters when you have this first one, The Flash? All right, let me just go ahead and play the drop real quick.
And it's official. They finally released the numbers. This is the worst box office bomb in Warner Brothers, the studio that created this, in their history. Green Lantern, if you remember that from 2011, made more money than The Flash.
Yeah, this movie, I think we all knew this was coming. This got how many times did it get delayed? I mean,
it's been in various states of production for the last 10 years almost. And I think it was upwards of 8 to 9 different directors and people writing the script. Ezra Miller was always attached to it. But, I remember when they started releasing photos from the movie, you even were telling me, it's like, you realize we're never going to see this movie. Well, in certain ways, I wish we hadn't seen this movie, to be honest with you.
I 100% agree with that. I went and saw it, of course. We all saw it for one reason and really one reason only, and that was Michael Keaton doing the role as Batman. That was kind of the big seller of it.
Right. And, before the movie had come out, I think it started in February, Warner Brothers were releasing early reactions. There were a lot of people saying it's one of the greatest superhero movies of all time. It was their personal best superhero movie since The Dark Knight. They even got Tom Cruise, sent him an early copy, and he said, this is why we go to the movies. This is just great. It got everybody pumped. But unfortunately, along with that, Ezra Miller, the movie's main star, through the last 2 or 3 years has had just so many. He was arrested. He was breaking into people's houses. He apparently has some cult farm up in New Hampshire where there were guns in front of kids, things like that. Really bad press. And I got to tell you, this was all happening. And I'm not a studio guy. I don't know how much money it takes to make these movies or reshoot. there was certainly enough time to reshoot this movie and redo it with another actor. There was more than enough time.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is just how much of the film was already done. I mean, the film was done, right?
Right.
You know,
Oh yeah.
and what are you gonna do? You can spend more money on the bad CGI that was in there. You know, for those of you that haven't seen it, the CGI is horrendous. It is so bad. I
If
mean,
you
I really could have done
Yeah, if you remember the CGI from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie, at the end of the movie when the Zords came around, it was a lot like that.
Yeah, and so, you know, it just wasn't what we, the fans, really wanted. And I think Warner Brothers, you know, knew that as well too. That's why that universe, you know, if those of you don't know, that universe is really dead with Warner Brothers. They're redoing it, relaunching the whole DC universe with James Gunn running the show. He left Marvel. He's with Warner Brothers and DC now. But yeah, and, you know, it wasn't that great of a movie. I think it could have been great, honestly.
Oh, no question. You know, Ezra Miller bullcrap in real life aside, that movie just had so much potential. And, you know, I couldn't shut up about it for the last couple of years. Michael Keaton was coming back as Batman. And I think if it would have been released before Spider-Man No Way Home, when we saw like just how great they Disney and Marvel brought back Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, spoiler alert for almost a 2 to 3 year old movie, but they did that so well, bringing back those actors as our fan favorite characters. The way that they brought Michael Keaton back was like almost like you know, a putting on wet socks for me. I really disliked how they portrayed him. I didn't like how, as Batman, as an old man, during his fight scenes, that he was just so floaty and he was more acrobatic as an old man than he was, you know, 30 years ago in the original two movies he was in, Batman and Batman Returns. And one of the reasons why that rubbed me such the wrong way, too, was I loved how they did the fight scenes in those original two movies where, yeah, there was a group of guys there, but he systematically took them out one by one. He wasn't, you know, doing this and doing, you know, cartwheels and reverse axles, whatever, taking out a room full of goons. And it just, I don't know, it just fell really flat for me. And I was sitting in the theater and I leaned over to our mutual friend and I said to him, I was like, I really hate this movie. I just don't like it for the Michael Keaton reason, how they brought him back.
Yeah, and that part didn't bother me as much. I mean, you know, he's a little bit wiser, you know, but I do agree he was kind of floating around. It wasn't as tactical, but like that part didn't really bother me. I really just couldn't get past how bad the CGI was. I mean,
Oh,
even when
awful.
he's running through, you know, the time force, that's really kind of where it killed me. And you know, like I get that he's seeing like, you know, when he runs through it, so what happens is basically around him he sees his memories and he's running through each of his memories. But you know, like I get you tried to do something different, but the CGI on that like whole just scene part, whatever you want to call it, just awful, right? I mean, you know, like you go back and watch old movies and you see how bad those graphics are now because they've come so far since then, right? We have such a high standard now when we go in to see these movies. And they just didn't deliver. It looks like this movie was made 15 years ago. And this is a new blockbuster film. And actually, I guess technically you want to get into it. It was made of like basically what, like 5 years ago.
Right. But even if it was 5 years ago, there's no excuse for that CGI. And just kind of to rub salt in the wound a little bit, the director, you know, came out and defended the CGI and said it was supposed to look that way, which, hey, maybe if that's your artistic choice, it's fine. But it's just like, I really doubt you wanted your movie to look like that. I don't, I couldn't imagine. And, you know, this is the director, everyone, is Andy Muschietti, who's famous for directing the It and It Chapter 2, those recent adaptations of the novel It. And he also did Mama. And he typically has an interesting, like almost claymation style of horror, which I thought really worked for his horror movies. He didn't bring that over here, but even if he wanted the CGI to look like that, I don't know. Why wouldn't have, if that's his preferred look for CGI, why wouldn't have his other CGI and his other movies look like that too? Certainly
Right.
that
That's
is not his style.
Right. And that's why the Macho Man's got a few words for him.
It's a lie.
Right.
It's a lie.
He's just
It's
a liar.
He's a liar.
He's a liar.
Now, it's so funny though, because you had just brought up that Warner Brothers is essentially rebooting the whole DC universe. James Gunn felt, I don't know if he felt sorry for him or he sees so much potential in Andy Muschietti. There is going to be, outside of Robert Pattinson's Batman movies, which apparently are going to be their own thing, thank God, James Gunn has hired Andy Muschietti to do the new DC Batman, and they're doing an adaptation of Batman the Brave and the Bold, which I'm excited to see, just the Bat family together, but it's just like, I think perhaps another director would be better, personally, right now. Now, the movie might come out and I might see a trailer and be like, oh my gosh, that looks amazing. He definitely learned his lessons. But Matt, you're shaking your head, and I'm just being optimistic here, but I would be so much more comfortable if they'd hire someone else, like literally anyone else.
Hey, James Gunn.
How about no?
Like, we don't need, okay, to diminish the masterpiece that is the Batman. And I don't want to get too far off topic here, but like, you already have a universe set up. You don't need to create a separate one, right? Stick with what you have, do what you're doing, and just, shut up and take my money.
Take my money.
Just take my money, right?
The reason why we're getting so many Batmans and, we're getting a sequel to Joker is, you and I have both said this for a while, Batman and his characters make Warner Brothers the most money. Not
right
outside of the Flash, obviously, but I don't think the Flash was Batman's fault. I think it had a lot to do with Ezra Miller, personally.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it could have been a great movie. It didn't deliver. We all went to see it for Michael Keaton, really relive kind of our childhood on that. It's a botch for me. I would not waste your time. Frank, what say you?
It's certainly a botch for me. However, I just did read an article this afternoon that it is hitting HBO Max next week. So if you are in the mood to watch a terrible superhero movie, it's available for you. But I honestly revisit one of your, actually, I tell you what, here's what you do. Rewatch The Batman if you haven't already. Rob Pattinson is vengeance, baby.
And I do want to bring up one last thing. So just to give you an idea of how bad Warner Bros. Has actually ruined a lot of these films, because for those of you who don't know, that's why there's a lot of problems in that DC universe, is the executives just don't understand the comics. They chased out a lot of directors, the fans. You don't think I'm right? Go watch Justice League and then watch the Zack Snyder director cut of Justice League. That says it all. I
got to tell you, and maybe that we'll do a whole episode on that someday. But I've been saying it, remember when you had texted me after I finished watching it and you said, what did you think? And I just wrote back to you, I will never forgive Warner Brothers for this, what they kept from us.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Yeah. We're going to go ahead. We'll move on to the next streamer botch. It is Transformers Rise of the Beasts. Frank, what number is this?
Oh gosh, this is Transformers 6 or 7.
Yeah, something like that. I lost track.
Right. And the only reason I was pumped to see this movie is because you grew up in the 90s. They were finally bringing in the Maximals, which are, hence the title Rise of the Beast. But for a movie that's titled Rise of the Beast, I thought that the Maximals, the animal Transformers, they had a great opening sequence, and I loved the opening sequence. I was like, oh my gosh, finally we get to see this. And then the Maximals disappear for almost the entire movie and come in probably like the last half hour, 40 minutes. And my biggest issue, and this has been my biggest issue for Transformers forever, and I'm a fan. Like, I have so many I can't tell you how many Optimus Prime toys I have. but it's time. It is beyond time to cut the humans out of the story entirely. I just don't. The humans just don't add anything to the story, and the Transformers characters are interesting enough that they're certainly able to carry at least 2 or 3 movies on their own. I like the actor who is the main guy. I don't know his name, but he was in it was the musical In the Streets or In the Hood. No, oh gosh, I'm gonna remember it anyway.
Drawing a blank. That's how much like I just like this movie
Right.
just was whatever for me.
But the amount of times him and the love interest will say, remind the audience that they are from Brooklyn is almost nauseating. You know, it's like every other word. And they're like, hey, I'm going to go grab a hot dog. And by the way, I'm from Brooklyn. You know,
The only
just
thing I was missing was the Beastie Boys drop. You know, no sleep till Brooklyn.
and for the amount of times they bring up Brooklyn, it's almost like shameful that they didn't play that song.
I know, you know, I mean, I can't even remember. Maybe they did. I don't remember because the movie was that uninteresting to me. I remember seeing the trailer. I said, you know, there wasn't a lot coming out around this time. And I
Sure.
said, you know, if I'm going to go to the movies, I am going to go see Transformers Rise of the Beast. And I think, Frank, you had mentioned that it was streaming on Paramount Plus. And, you know,
Mhm.
here's pro tip. You know, I'm going to go solo, talk to you, the people. Pro tip, right? If you have not used a free trial on any of these streaming sites to watch something that you are interested in, you need to do it, right? I had a free trial, Paramount Plus, and I hammered through this and other things that I was interested that were sitting out there. There's a bunch of great stuff out on Paramount Plus, including the Scream movies, all the
Oh,
Transformers that are out there, Godfather.
the
Frank, anything?
last 2 Scream movies, hands down, or I honestly think I like them better than the originals. They came back with such great ideas. It's so fresh. It's and you know, but that's off topic. But I agree with Matt. Paramount Plus is such a good streaming service. I am not a massive Star Trek fan. I dabble every now and again, but I watched the whole 3 seasons of Picard, and I was not a big Next Generation person. I've caught a few episodes. I've seen the movies a bunch of times, but Picard was just wonderful. Oh, and it just a great beginning, middle, and end, and just such a great send off for that character. But they also leave it open for more. But that's, you know, I don't want to spoil too heavy on that. But I agree with Matt. Paramount Plus, and if you get Paramount Plus, I got to tell you, Transformers: Rise of the Beast is a botch. Watch something else on Paramount Plus.
Yeah, it really was. You know, these movies, they need to stop. The stories are just not interesting. They're not good. You know what? I think they would just be better if it was just the same old Optimus Prime versus Megatron, right? Just, you know,
Right.
keep it classic like you did with the first like three, you know. And if you're gonna watch Transformers, watch Dark Side of the Moon. It's the best one,
It
right?
really is. It really is. And you know, I think why we like it so much is it followed Revenge of the Fallen, which is, you know, it has its moments with the action, but on, on the whole, just a really bad movie. So going into Dark of the Moon, you know, our expectations were so low, like, and I just felt like with that one, they were really trying with the script. They're like, oh, and there's going to be a plot twist here, here, and here, and I was like, oh, there's a plot twist in a Transformers movie, you know.
Yeah, it just did not hit, you know. Again, I really this franchise needs to die. Just like I said, you know, I know last episode we talked about the Fast and the Furious franchise. I also think they need to stop with that. But the truth is they're not going to stop a lot of these franchises. They're going to keep putting out content. You know, those of you who are into movies, you see it. They just remake movies nowadays. They don't have any original ideas, and they keep going back to the same old because they know fans like us are going to spend the money to see it regardless, whether that's on in the theater, on a streaming site, renting it. No matter what, we're spending the money.
Yeah, and There is another Transformers movie coming out within the next year, but it's all going to be animated and it's all going to be about the robots back on Cybertron. So they have me for at least one more, but if that one isn't good, then I'm done, and I'm just gonna rewatch the ones that I like, and that's fine. If you're sitting there going, Rise of the Beast was my favorite one, I'm glad it was, but I'm now at a point with it where I'm just like, there's just been too many whoopsies, and this one certainly is a whoopsie to me. But if you liked it, great. It's just not my preferred Transformers.
Right, and actually, that sounds interesting. I'd be down to watch a cartoon Transformers. Kind of like if you guys have seen Kevin Smith, he did a Masters of the Universe
Oh
on
yeah.
Netflix. Super good, right? It was
We're a
amazing.
minority. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you're good.
All right, we're a minority. I feel like we're two out of 100 people that actually liked it. But here's the thing: it's great, and everybody else is wrong.
Yeah, sorry, you're wrong on that. It's amazing. I've actually rewatched it multiple times because
Same.
it's that good.
Yeah.
But anyways, Transformers: Rise of the Beast. It's a botch for me. Frank, what say you?
Oh, it's absolutely a botch. There's no question about it. I actually, because I wanted to see it in theaters, but I just couldn't make it out. And it was very telling when it was available to buy almost like a couple weeks after it was out in theaters on Amazon. So I bought it. I was like, I'll just spend the money. And I just was like, oh man, I should not have spent the money on this. So I have it, but I doubt I will rewatch it anytime soon, or if at all.
Yep. Moving on here. The next one we have is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I didn't see this one, but Frank, I know you saw it. You gave me some good comments and feedback on it. So why don't you go ahead and let's hear what you have to say.
Okay, so I like many of you was very let down and almost angry at the last Indiana Jones movie, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and it absolutely left something to be desired. I know it has its fans. I'm just not one of them. So when they announced that they were going to do one more, I was just like, oh, can't we just let it die and let it alone? And then the reviews started coming out, and everybody was saying just how lackluster it was and how boring, how long, and how Disney's always getting accused of putting these new characters in these old franchises and basically crapping all over them. And when the reviews did come out, I remember just like watching the review on YouTube and going, I was like, you guys had one job, just to get Indiana Jones right one last time. So I took it off the list of things to see, but then I caught myself at home and my kid was at daycare. My wife was off and she probably just wanted to get me out of the house, which is fine. She said, why don't you go to the movies? The only thing really to see was the new Indiana Jones. So I thought, all right, I'm just going to go see it. The worst, it's going to be a bad movie, and I get some popcorn, whatever. I went in with very low expectations, and I will tell you, it's nowhere near the original trilogy. I don't think anybody's ever going to touch that, but I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was fun. I thought the whole gimmick of the Dial of Destiny was interesting, and I liked how, just like any classic Indiana Jones treasure or artifact, they say, oh, it's supposed to work this way, but then it ends up working another way. And I really enjoyed like how it worked out. I won't spoil it for you. But I think the thing that I liked the most about it was the fact that he was fighting the Nazis again. It opens up with this 20-minute train sequence. And I was telling, I don't know if I was telling you this or our other friend, this was the summer of trains. I saw so many movies where there was a train sequence and they were all awesome, including the final movie we'll talk about. But just a few more things about Indiana Jones. The train sequence was fun. I liked the story where Indy ended up. This is a spoiler, but I think most people, this might probably entice you to go see the movie. Shia LaBeouf's character was killed off screen, and it's kind of a late reveal in the movie. Like, that's why he's such in grief and whatever. But I was sitting there, and I when it was revealed, like, Mutt Williams is dead, I said, good. And the guy next to me literally goes, right? But ultimately, another one of the last things that I thought the critics were wrong about. I thought Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character fit so well into the universe, and I thought her character was great. She was kind of the anti-Indiana Jones, and or just kind of reminded him of his younger self. And that's another thing why he's like, oh, I'm getting old. I remember I used to pull things like this and that. But as much as I liked her character, my one complaint of the movie is it would have made more sense if that character was the adult Short Round.
Yeah, I didn't see this movie, but you gave me some good feedback. I am glad they kind of hit on those classic notes. That's really what the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was missing. It didn't hit on that classic stuff,
No.
and Shia LaBeouf's character, just like you said, it didn't really hit like I think they wanted it to. But your feedback on this got me excited about it. I actually can't wait till it's available to me to actually rent and see, because I wasn't able to see it in the theaters, and I figured this is one I'll just wait for. But like you said, if you go in with low expectations, you're always going to be pleasantly surprised most of the time. Especially something like Indiana Jones. I actually had no interest in seeing this until you said something. Mainly because the Crystal Skull just wasn't good. I mean, I've
Right.
watched it a couple of times. It just is not a good movie. And I'd rather go back and watch the original trilogy. Like, I love those originals. Those are my favorite. I think it's your favorite too. Maybe The Last Crusade. That's my favorite.
It's paced so well. The story's great. It is chef's kiss. And I loved how last year we didn't talk to each other about it, but it was revealed at my Christmas sweater party that we had both been binging them at the same time. Oh, so good.
I can't
So
help
good.
it, and like even Temple of Doom. I mean, just such a great film. I always love doing the Kalima, Kalima.
I think Temple of Doom has my favorite John Williams Indiana Jones score, because anytime Short Round's doing something, like they play the short, it's like dun 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 dun. It's so good. It's so good.
Yes.
And
Yeah, but
that actor is so great.
I
He's so fun.
he is, and I was happy to see him get an Oscar for Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Also a film that everybody should watch if you haven't already.
Yeah, great film. But like in my old age, honestly, Indiana Jones, I never really liked a lot the first one, the original. But the more and more I watch it, the more I love that one too. And that trilogy, like I said, well, you said it as well. It's never going to be touched. They're never going to touch these with that. They're really, again, they're just pulling at the pocketbooks with these films. Like I said, So
the 80s in general, and this could be an episode for the future, there was just something just so alive and magic in filmmaking during that decade. Horror, action, adventure, sci-fi, romance. There are just so many classics that came from there that it and you could be like blindfolded, walked into a theater, and they put on an 80s movie that you hadn't even seen. It was made in the 80s. Like there's just a certain mystique to all these movies.
Yeah, so Frank, you saw it. What is it? Stream or Botch for you?
I got to tell you, not only am I going to stream this movie, but it's going to be available to buy digitally next week, I believe on the 29th. So Matt, look out for that on Our Movies Anywhere. If you're still not sold on it, it will probably be on Disney Plus by October. So I would definitely wait for that. If you don't like it, hey, here's an idea. Just turn it off. But honestly, I thought it was really good. I thought it was a good send off to the character. It had some great sequences. The action is awesome. There is a scene. I think they're in Morocco where they're on these like little motorcycle bikes. Oh, it was great. It got goosebumps thinking about it. But definitely a stream for me.
Nice. Yeah. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, You picked up the next movie we're going to talk about, so I got to throw you one back. So I'm going to throw you Indiana Jones.
I was 110% picking up this film. We are leveling up here. All right, we are talking about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I am rocking the Spider-Man tee, right? We got the Spider-Man going on. I could not wait for this film. I loved the first one so much. The animation, the story, everything about it. You know what? I was shocked. Sony put this out. How long has it been since Sony put out a good film?
Well, I mean, if you consider Far From Home, Sony, because they did either. No, that's Disney. But hey, real quick, back to the t-shirts. I do want to give a quick shout out to my cousin Brian, who actually got this shirt for me as a gift. Brian, thank you so much. Sick shirt, man. Appreciate you. But as far as Sony putting out a good movie, I would say it was probably the last good Marvel movie that they put out was Into the Spider-Verse. And like Matt, I was pumped for this movie, even though like I'm not really that into going to see superhero movies in theaters currently. This was the exception, because I just knew there was just no way that this was going to be a bad movie. And since Matt has bought it and it's on our Movies Anywhere, I've watched it 3 times, and not including when I saw it in theaters. But I don't know if Matt mentioned this, but I think part of the thing that makes the movie so good, 1 and 2, is the soundtrack. Oh, every song fits the scene so perfectly.
Listen, Frank and I talk about this all the time. What separates a good movie from a great movie? The soundtrack. And it doesn't even have to be popular songs that you hear on the radio, just even scores, right? Like we even have composers that we prefer in movies because their scores just hit on every level. But Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, it does get a little kind of hip-hoppy, right? Which is kind of up my alley. But the soundtrack hit on the first one. It hits on the second one. I have multiple tracks on my Spotify playlist. That's how much I love the soundtrack of this movie. I listen to them all the time. But when this movie was coming out, I could not wait. For those of you that don't know, this is the Miles Morales story, right? He gets bitten, by a spider, and he's the Spider-Man of his world. And he has, in the first one, if you haven't seen it, what's his name? Kingpin creates a collider. It collides with other universes, and it pulls in villains and Spider-Mans from those universes, and kind of just as worlds, and they have to kind of shut it down. Well, this one follows that, right? Plays off of that, because there are still tears in these universes where people are still falling through. And Spider-Man, I think it's 2099, he actually creates this kind of task force of Spider-Man, spider people, I should say, because there's women, there's dinosaurs, there's a little bit of everyone.
The cowboy just like kills me every time. It's just like so out of nowhere.
Draw on account of draw. But it is just so good. Even the jokes, right? But basically, they reveal a big part of Miles Morales' story, like how he actually became Spider-Man. And I don't want to throw any spoilers out there, but that was just, I think, just a masterpiece. How they are tying these movies together. Now, unfortunately, this is a spoiler. This is part 1. We have to wait for part 2. So we are left on a cliffhanger.
It is a cliffhanger. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. However, even the first time watching it, I was so, as a Spider-Man fan, and I don't want to spoil anything for you, because it's just like, I was like sitting in my seat, just like rocking back and forth, like so pumped. And just how this movie, like how it sets it up for the next one, because like the last like 10 minutes or so, they start planting the seeds for it. And the way that it ends, the final shot, and who starts showing up out of these portals and where it's going, it got me so pumped. I'm not even mad that it left us on a cliffhanger. I could care. It is a bit unfortunate because right now Hollywood is in the middle of not only a writer's strike but an actor's strike. So this movie was the next movie. I think it's called Beyond the Spider-Verse, was supposed to launch in March of 2024. Sony has removed it from their release calendar indefinitely. So I'm going to say it probably will be 2025 at the earliest before we see this movie, which honestly I'm okay with, because it was like 2018 the first one came out, and then 5 years. So I have no issue rewatching these first two movies again and again. It's only going to get me more excited for how, if it's going to end the way that you and I talked about and theorized, like this is definitely where it's going. It's probably going to be one of the greatest superhero movies ever made.
Yeah, we do have some theories Frank and I talked, off the stream about. Don't want to bring them up here, ruin it for anyone who hasn't seen it, because it really is a great film. But I agree with you, Frank. I don't care if it's coming out next year, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. I am pretty satisfied with rewatching 1 and 2 over and over again. And I'm just a Spider-Man fan. I mean, I'll watch Spider-Man all day. I just rewatched the Tom Holland Spider-Mans not that long ago. I watched the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans. I mean, and every once in a while, I'll put on the old cartoon Spider-Mans, and I'll just.
The great thing about that cartoon is Matt and I, this was years ago, we both watched the cartoon around the same time. And there was an episode where there's a villain by the name of the Spot. And for years, Matt and I would just be like, he was the butt of a lot of our jokes. We'd be like, oh, the Spot. Ah!
Well, you got to tell him about the voice, though. What he has, like this, British, kind of accent, like I'm the
He's
Spot.
like, hello, I'm the Spot. I'm over here. Now I'm over here. And but the greatest thing is, never did we imagine we would ever see the Spot as a villain in a movie. He is the secondary villain in Across the Spider-Verse, and how they do. I love how they're like the first couple scenes. It's like obviously he's a big joke, but then like halfway through, you see just what kind of a threat he could actually be, and it's terrifying.
How powerful!
Yeah. Oh,
it is. It's terrifying, and I love the way they did it. And when I first saw that, I was like, "Are you serious? We're getting in the Spot." We've joked about this so many times. I mean, he's not even villain of the week.
No,
it's
and there was another great episode where in that cartoon where it's just all about the villains like Silvermane and everything, and like all these like D-list characters just start coming out of the woodwork. The only way that episode would have been better is if the Spot showed up, because I don't think he shows up in that episode.
Right. But yeah, it's definitely a stream for me, Frank. What say you?
It is not just a stream. It is an absolute buy. And especially if you have kids, not only are you going to be able to, kind of like Super Mario Brothers, like your kids are going to enjoy it, you are going to enjoy it, but like it is just a fantastic ride. And it's so easily digested. It goes down like a delicious meal. Absolutely stream it, buy it, watch it 100 times.
Like a fine Chianti.
Yes, with some fava beans.
And some fava beans. I definitely, I agree with you. I have my kids hooked on it. My daughter watches these Spider-Mans constantly. I took them to the theater. It is a buy. Frank, you don't have to buy it because I bought it for us, so we're all good. And you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, and you'll be welcome with Indiana Jones next week.
I absolutely will. That will be a nice treat.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on to, I think, what is becoming a lot of people's favorite segment, children with adult money. How much longer we can continue the segment, I don't know. We'll see how long the adult money lasts. We don't have.
Had to take it. I had to take it up with my budget committee, aka the wife. So we'll see.
Absolutely, but we'll go ahead. We'll add to the stream here for those of you on YouTube. I do have the stream up, and I am sharing. So mine again is another T-shirt. You people just don't understand the power of the dark side.
You don't know the power of the dark side.
I am so addicted to graphic shirts. I cannot help myself, and I found this guy. This company, Play Nice Studio Live on Instagram, That's part of my problem. I'm on Instagram. It's in my algorithm. This stuff pops up constantly for me. Friday is one of my all-time favorite movies. I love it, comedy-wise. Next Friday is my favorite. But Debo is one of the all-time best villains. And when I saw this T-shirt with just him, and it said "What bike" underneath,
What bike?
from that just classic scene where he knocks out, the dude. He goes and asks for his bike back. He knocks him out, takes his chain and stuff like that. I was dying. I was like, I have to have it.
It's such
Frank,
a
I know
classic.
you're laughing. You like it.
It's just such a classic movie, and that's why I like the first one so much. Not only do we get Debo, but we get Smokey in that one. And the whole scene, what bike, I started cracking up because I just remember him like riding away on the bike, and the bike is just so small compared to him. It's so funny. Like, dude, find a bigger bike, but he's just like, nope, it's my bike.
It's like one of those. I think they're called like lowrider bikes. I'm not really sure about that, but
Sure.
it's a bike, and the best part about it too is he's so large on this bike that he squeaks when he's coming down there. So you hear
You
the
always know
squeaking.
he's coming. You always know.
Yeah, so everybody knows he's coming and they run away. I love it. But let's so this was mine for this episode. Like I said, you guys don't know the power of the dark side. My graphic t-shirt collection is becoming out of control. But Frank, we're gonna go ahead and get into yours.
So I actually picked this up a couple months ago, right around the time that it released. Nintendo has these directs, and sometimes they do these shadow drops where, hey, we announced this game. When is it available? And they'll be like, this afternoon. So they announced a Metroid Prime remaster, and this is a game I played on the original GameCube. Call it 2003, so it's about 20 years old. And I remember this game being the best looking game ever on the GameCube. Like, the graphics at the time were insane. I never could beat it because I just wasn't smart enough. And one of the biggest reasons was I couldn't read the map. I would just be like, I have no idea what this map is. I don't know how to navigate it. Well, 20 years later, now that they remastered it, and it was a discount price. I think it was like $35, $40, which for a game is relatively cheap. And I bought it. And now, as an adult, I know how to read a map. They updated it not only with just with today's graphics. It looks beautiful. It looks even better than it did back then. But they put a modern control scheme in there, which is so key. It's just so many quality of life updates for this game. And I beat it about 3 times. And I was shocked. I was like, wow, this is actually a pretty short game. So I replayed it a bunch of times, and I think it just keeps getting better and better every time I play it. And if you have a Nintendo Switch, that's the only thing, because it's a Nintendo exclusive. If you haven't played this game, you absolutely should check it out. Watch a trailer, see if it's for you. But oh man, it's so fun to play. I love this game, and I'm so happy Nintendo did this. And I'm hoping, because there's sequels, there's Metroid Prime 2 and 3. If they could just remaster those, I would be very happy. Thank you, Nintendo. Please do that.
Yeah, it's a pretty awesome price for a video game, especially in today's world. I mean, video
Yeah.
games are so expensive. So yeah, $35 for, basically what is a classic, game. And Nintendo knows what they're doing with these exclusives and these
Oh, yeah.
characters. And they know it. They got all our money. But
Right.
that's going to do it all for us here today. We want to thank you for listening. Stay tuned for, our episode 3 coming out. Hopefully in a few weeks. We're going to talk July and August blockbuster movies. But you can catch us here, same streaming time, same streaming platform. Thank you, everybody.